Hi, welcome back to Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this video, we're going to cover installing a front end on the 32 Ford Roadster frame. We just completed the Roadster body, so somewhere during this video, the body is going to disappear and we'll probably put our body back on the frame. So we're taking the opportunity to install the front end here on it. Behind the camera lady, I've got all the parts laid out. These are all the parts we bought on a previous video, plus some other ones we picked up. Essentially, this is a 37 to 41 Ford spindles. We're using GM metric calipers, GM metric rotors. It's a relatively straightforward kit. It's one that we've used before. All the pieces are here. I had to buy some perch mounts. I was missing those, so I was waiting for those to come in. It's the same thing we have on our 29 Model A and our 32 Ford over there. Over here is the front axle. It's a forged I-beam axle. If you noticed here, I cleaned it up and polished it because I intend to get this powder coated. Just wanted a nice smooth surface. I did this on the Model A. Here's the hairpins. I had to take the hairpins apart. It'd been sitting around for quite a while, so I retapped all of these holes to put the clevis pins in and the rod ends on. Probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up probably a time-lapse video and show putting some of this together. I'll stop it along the way and I'll talk about where to install the mounts for the radius rods and go through a couple little different things. But that's going to be the video for this week, is putting a front end in the 32 Ford Roadster frame. I'm going to install one of these spindles. The spindle goes on like this, right on top of here. And then in between the bottom here, there's a bearing. Now the bearing, you'll have to try it in a couple of different times, but sometimes the bearing will go in without the shims, but they send you a whole packet of different shims. So essentially fit the bearing in and fit as many shims in as you can. So you've got basically no play in there. And then the kingpin, I just put it in a couple seconds ago and I forgot to put this in. There's actually a little dust cap and a piece of felt that goes on. That, so that goes in the top. That little notch there has to face this hole because there's going to be a locking pin that goes in there. I put a little bit of grease in the hole already. I'm just going to tap that down. Sometimes they'll slide in really nice, and other times you gotta tap them. Like I say, well, and to rotate the kingpin. So just have to rotate the kingpin, and this will slide in there and lock the kingpin in place. So I'm going to carry on with the other side here and do the exact same thing, and we'll keep on going with it. So I just showed you a time lapse of me putting the opposite side on, which went on just as slick as anything versus the difficulty over here. I actually had an extra one too many shims in this one, so I had to take it off. The kingpin actually slides in and out just fine. The locking pin, I'm going to have to clean that up a little bit. But as you just saw on the time lapse, the locking pin went in really well here. Next up, I'm going to attach the spindle arms and the bat wings, and I'll get it ready to position it in the front of the car. The situation I want to come up with is I want to have it all assembled, have these spindles all lined up with the tie rod, and ultimately set it in the front of the car at the ride height. Once I have it at the ride height, then I can adjust the, it's a caster, the camber, but where the axle leans towards the back of the car. We set that at 5 to 7 degrees. I'll cover that as we get more of this assembled. Next up, I'm going to mount the caliper brackets and the steering arms. It's relatively straightforward to put on. There's these hold the GM calipers. They go, well, it goes on this way and then this way on the other side. There's 2 bolts and nuts that go across the top here to hold it in place, and these 2 across the bottom will actually screw into the spindle arms. Now, right now I'm not putting any Loctite on these, but when you assemble these on the car for the final assembly, strongly recommend that you Loctite these in place, these bottom ones. So I'm just going to get an Allen wrench and I'll tighten those up, and we'll do the same thing over here on the other side. Screws in like that. Or shall I throw the bolts on the floor by the camera lady? And we're using a cross steering on this one, so probably use, well, I shouldn't say probably, we will use a unisteer box instead of a Vega box. So we've got the extra hole on this side. So we're just going to start those. Put them across the top. This. There's lock nuts, and again, just because we're assembling it on here, no Loctite now, but when you put it on the car, these bottom ones put Loctite on them. I'm telling you from experience on that one, because when I first built my Model A, they actually came loose. So I'll tighten those up. We'll put some spring perches next and tie rod ends. So we're going to install the bat wings next. It's pretty simple, straightforward again. Spring perch goes through the top, and then the shock bracket goes across the bottom. Now, during the final assembly, there's actually a little notch there. I'll insert actually a piece of square rod that I've got up there, which will time this through the notch in the spring perch. That way it'll keep alignment. But for assembly purposes now, just going to put those on. If it'll screw on. So starting to get a little heavy right now, so I'm going to take this off and put it on the car. as you just saw, the 32 Roadster body that we just finished building in the previous 7 episodes or whatever just left. And then I got my customer there to, or friend actually, to help me take our 32 Roadster body that was over here and put it on our frame, which now I've actually got a little bit of room to work on metal, and I'll start pulling all the 5-window stuff out, laying it out, getting ready to work on it. In the meantime, with this video, I assembled parts of the front end, I put the wishbones on, and right now I'm just positioning it on the body. What I'm doing is I squared up the 2 spindles, and one thing I didn't mention previously was that the spindles require this insert to be pressed on these spindles in order to make the GM rotors work. The other thing that I did incorrectly in the previous assembly video is I put my shim stock down here by the bearing. Normally you put it up top here, so I'm going to take that apart, and I should have known better, but the shims usually go above. The axle sits directly on the bearing here, so that's going to be corrected. In order to set this up, what I do is I don't put the spring in. I put the axle in place. I set it at about ride heights, which is about, the axle is about 4.5 to 5 inches off the floor there. I set my frame at approximately the frame height of my other cars. And then what I'm doing now is I'm positioning these axles at 106 inches from the back wheel on both sides. And then I'm setting the angle here at between 5 and 7 degrees. I'll lean more towards 7. I've got a little adjustment to do. Once I'm happy with that, then I'm going to drill the holes here through the frame to attach the wishbones. Once I have those in and the bolts in place, then I'm going to put the spring in, because in reality the suspension has to be set up at ride heights with the spring compressed. I can't do that without enough weight in the car. So 106 wheelbase. The rear end was previously set up square to the back of the car. If I now set up the front axle square to the back at the same distance and across, then we'll have a squared up frame. So I'm going to carry on doing the assembly on this, and I'll show you where we are shortly. Hi, so I carried on assembling this. Like I said previously, I've set the angle here at 7 degrees at the ride heights. Had my 106 inches front to back, and then I mounted the tie rod end through the frame. So what I did, I didn't want to just drill a straight hole through and put a bolt through to it, because then you're just going to compress the frame. So what I do is I put a piece of tubing, steel tubing, I drill a hole big enough through the frame so that I weld a piece of steel tubing in there on either end. Then the bolt goes through the tubing and it'll compress on the tubing. So it's welded on this side and it's welded on the back here. And then I just got to trim it up a little bit, and I'll put clinch nuts or locking nuts onto that with grade 8 bolts when we go out on the road. The other thing I installed was the panhard bar. This was a kit we got from Welder Series, so it welds to the frame on this side, on the driver's side. So it's welded there. I'm going to take that off because when you put weight onto it, it actually will shorten up. So it's just in there for now. I can adjust it. I've also put the spring in place here. So basically this spring is under, it's raised up a little bit. And now I'm just getting ready to weld the upper shock mounts on. Once I have the upper shock mounts on, I'm going to install the rotors, the calipers, and get a set of wheels on the front of it, and we'll complete the front end. The upper shock mounts are welded on now. The calipers are on, the rotors are on. I've got my front wheels that I use for the past couple builds for basically rolling the car around the garage. They're a wide profile tire. They are by no means what I put on the road, but they're the approximate height of a tire that I'm going to put on the front of the car. So it's representative of the height. So we've completed putting the front end on our 32 Ford Roadster. It's now, I can actually now roll it and move it around the garage if I have to, or wheel it outside while I shuffle something else around so it's a little more mobile. We are now going to switch working onto the 5-window coupes. This is a project we're going to continue working on off and on as we go throughout the year. There isn't a huge rush to get it on the road because we've got 2 other vehicles, but the focus going forward will be the 2 5-window coupes. So that's it for now on the 32 Ford Roadster front end installation. Any questions, shoot us an email, shoot us a text, Insta message, post comments on YouTube, and please subscribe to the channel. Be much appreciated. Everybody have a great weekend. Take care.